Hi there and welcome. It's Roger at SwiftCloud, and in this quick video I want to show you our rebilling and subscriptions module. It's incredibly powerful and it can be used for a lot of different rebilling functionality. So for example, if you're a landlord and you need leases, if you're a insurance company and you need to bill your clients monthly, let's say quarterly, annually, whatever it is, it's got the flexibility for all of that. So what I want to do is take kind of a top level tour and give you just a taste of everything. I don't want to go through every single little thing because it's fairly powerful. And what will happen is that certain functions will be relevant to you and others will not. So let's dive in. So what I want to do is we're going to talk about subscriptions and rebilling. Well, that gets a little bit complicated. So first of all, when are we rebilling? Are we rebilling on the first of the month? That's like an apartment lease. Or are we rebilling, let's say, the 23rd, based on whatever date they sign up? That would be like a subscription, right? A software subscription. We've got both. And which is best for you? I can't say that. That's up to you. So you can have flexible date, or you can have the first of the month, both of which are allowed, right? We also have something called metered use. So metered use uses a shared ledger system. And so what that would allow for is basically like pseudocurrency, something like points. So in the case of SwiftCloud, we have electronic signature, for example. You can sign up, and some of the new 3.0 systems are going to allow for packages where you basically pay, let's say in the bulk email and bulk SMS system, right, where you have to pay per SMS. So you have a base rate, and then you have metered use, right? So if you send a lot of SMSs, you're going to pay more, and if you send very few SMSs, you're going to spend obviously less, right? So that's metered use, and then for that, we need to obviously track the actual usage. That then is done with something called a shared ledger. So we basically create a ledger that's basically like accounting. It's non-money accounting between the two of us. And then we also, in that system, track the money between us separately against that ledger, because that buys you certain pseudocurrency points, right? So if you care about this, it's really incredibly powerful. And if you don't care about it, then it's just something I want to draw your attention to as an option. But, obviously it's not relevant. We also have something called a deposit or a retainer. You typically see that with law firms, and that's where you make a payment up front and then you debit against that. In some cases, you may choose to use that for prepayment of, let's say, work for hire, right? Sometimes you'll see that where people pay a certain amount down and then you're billing them against the hour, that kind of thing. We also have HR and staffing agreements, and that can be in any currency. And so that's an incredibly powerful system in use by real staffing companies. And so it even allows for things like arbitrage and stuff like that, or different currencies. So for example, you could have outsourced staff, like internally here at SwiftCloud, we've got wonderful staff all over the planet. And including in the US and then also in Europe and India and that kind of thing. And they get paid in a variety of currencies. So we have to track basically their payment rates, and then sometimes in some cases we're billing that person to a client. So we might bill in US dollars and pay in rupees. Anyway, just letting you know that it's all possible. So with rebilling, we need to actually create a user account. Now, whether or not that person ever logs in and ever even knows that they have an account, that's okay. They don't have to. But they have to exist as a user within the system if it's rebill. Now, if it's one-off, that's okay. We can just take the payment, store the information, generate the receipt, and kick them out the door, as it were, meaning like deliver the goods. At that point, it's kind of a one and done, right? So if you just are buying a one-off system, then that is an option. For rebilling, they have to exist within a system, within the system as a user. Now, SwiftCloud is actually technically a social network. So what happens is, like, when you e-sign a doc, you become a user, and then we create a shared workspace between us and then store everything in that. We do the same for billing. So what happens is your billing records, your receipts, your payment records, all of that is there. And whether you like it or not, there is a portal built into SwiftCloud. Well, that portal also does include options for payment management. So one of the things that happens a lot in all subscriptions is a process called dunning. And what will happen is about 8% of your credit cards will expire on any given month or be stolen. They'll expire, they'll be stolen, they are compromised, or they're over limit. Basically, they're going to fail, right? So it's going to be something 8 to 10%. Obviously, if the economy noses down, then that might kick up to something like 12%. This can really create a lot of work for people at scale. So what we want to do is automate the process of updating the payment method as often as as smoothly as possible and in an automated fashion as possible. So the ways that people can update their payment, and I'll show you some of this stuff in a moment, but basically number one is the portal, and that's our self-service. And so basically what we do is we create sequences. So if payment fails, we'll create a sequence, and it'll say, hey, update your payment, and it'll get progressively more, let's say, persuasive, right? So initially it's sunshine and rainbows, and then eventually like, hey, we're going to cancel this if you don't update your payment, right? And you can choose as to when like what that sequence looks like, and you can even choose your billing date. So you can basically, with the new 3.0 system, the billing date and the automation that goes with it is basically part of the sequence itself. And that allows you to, let's say, bill on their rebuild date minus 10 days, so that if payment does fail by the 11th day, you completely cut them off. Well, you've given them 10 days of warning and notice and that kind of thing. And that way you're not you're being cool with your clients, and yet you're also not out of pocket in the sense of like letting them go over or getting, grace period days or something like that. For certain things like insurance policies, obviously this could be a really big deal. For other things, if it's like website hosting, maybe you don't care that you go over by, let's say, 3 days or 5 days or something like that until they get to the final, hey, we're cutting you off stage. Anyway, with the new sequences system in 3.0, you can choose as to when does that person get cut off. It's just another event within the sequence itself. Once they do pay, then obviously we want to remove them from that sequence so that we stop bugging them for payment and instead trigger a different sequence. Hey, thank you, you're all paid up, you're good to go, right? So self-service portal is one of the options, right? I'll show you that in a moment. We also have, with the new system, a automated phone system. And basically that allows somebody that way they don't have to speak to a human at that moment. If you have a large scale of phone operators, then what you can do is they can say, hey, we'll send you over to the payment system. They feel more secure. The client feels more secure because they're not giving their credit card to a human. And it's actually better in terms of cost savings, frankly, in terms of your human hours, because handling that stuff via human is not exactly the best use of your talent and your staff and your work hours. That's a job better left to a robot. So we do allow for human updating of an agreement. Again, I'll show you this in a moment. Basically in a couple different places, but basically from the contact record or from the agreement page, both of which can be updated. It is worth noting, so let me go back to this. So notice in this scenario, here I have an example, and here I'm logged in as SwiftCloud supports. This is all just demo. And down here, basically where you find the agreement, so here's all the actually like accounting system. That is, of course, currency specific. So if you're banking in euros or something, then you would see a euro symbol here, not a dollar sign. Anyway, it's based on whatever your core settings are. In the incoming and outgoing, you have what are called billing agreements, right? So billing agreements are any kind of agreement where I pay X and I get Y. And we also include in that card on file. Now, why would we have the card on file as a separate agreement? Because it technically is. I'm saying it's technically a different agreement saying I'm giving you permission to use this payment method to make my payment. The reason that we separate that from the actual subscription itself is because if payment fails, that doesn't necessarily mean we link the two together, but what we want to do is get the user to create a new agreement based on a new billing method, right? And so obviously we want to basically, like if this card, let's say, is compromised or it expires or something like it's over limit, whatever the case is, then it's going to switch here to cancel, block, charge back, any of these types of statuses. And then that's going to cause this agreement to fail. That will affect the other underlying agreement, but the invoice will continue to get generated. That's where it's important, is because we want to, if the payment fails, we don't want to cancel the underlying agreement until you tell us, right? And that's subject to separate rules. So if you choose to give them grace period, you can. If you choose not to, that's fine too. But basically what we want to do is obviously create a new agreement tied to a new billing method, right? And then relink the two, right? And so that's why we do that. So an individual billing agreement can be created up here. You just go as simple as add new. So if you've got let's say a karate school, you've got an insurance policy, whatever, this would obviously be, if you're doing this manually, then that's going to obviously be a pretty small insurance agency. So so that brings me to kind of what are the options. So dunning, I talked about this, sequences. We want to trigger a sequence if the payment fails, and then once payment succeeds, we want to remove them from that sequence so that we stop bugging them, and instead send them a say, hey, thank you, you're all set, we're good now, right? Something like that. In order to create a new agreement, we've got a couple different ways. One is a branded SwiftCloud sign up, and I say branded because it's branded to you, not to SwiftCloud, right? So here's what that looks like, but this logo up here would of course be yours, right? So whatever your company is, we want people to feel like they're in the right place. The background color can be yours, but at that point, what they're doing is they're actually creating an account in your portal and then signing up for something. So that's option one. Option two is an actual API. So if you've got a large scale system, let's say you need to create 200,000 subscriptions and manage that or something like that, then obviously we can do a bulk import. We'd have to do a custom import at that point to kind of handle that, and we'd start with that. That gets a little complicated because we can do a pilot program, that kind of thing. But what we can do is something with an API. So if you have an external system that you need to interface with us, then with the new SwiftCloud 3.0 system, everything is actually accessible via API. The entire app exists via API. It's actually like even the app itself is using the backend via API. We do that for security and scalability and that kind of thing. So we also have an option with eDoc, and so that's typically used with like e-sign and payment. So if somebody needs to sign, like electronically, legally binding, sign a document, including optionally sign and pay. So again, what we're doing technically there is creating multiple agreements. We're creating the billing method, right? We're storing the payment method on file, then we're creating the underlying agreement for the actual product. So in the case of insurance, it would be we're signing up for that policy, storing the billing method on file, and then linking the two, right? And then so that way later, if the payment method fails, then obviously we create a different agreement and kind of keep the policy open. So those are your options for that. So let me show you a little bit around the system. Up here in the top left, you've got, let's say here, all the different contacts. Let me see if I can get to a list of contacts. Here's an example of the contact individually. And down here, we do have an accounting system, like an accounting section. So from here, what I could do is create a new, let's say, billing method. I could add a new manual record, right? Let's say that they wanted to pay in advance. Let's say that they were late and you charged a late fee and you did this manually, right? So you could actually put in an amount and choose how to like what amount you're gonna charge them, right? So that could be a variable amount. So typically you see that if somebody wanted to adjust their payment dates, right? So in the new SwiftCloud 3.0 system, we will have an option to prorate and change people's payment dates if they're on flexible billing. If they're on the first, then obviously not. In that case, what we have to do is prorate the initial sign up. So if you sign up in the middle of the month on a first due, what it'll do is it'll charge you for 45 days, right? So this month plus 15 days of this month plus the following 1 month, right? So it'll take like the billing increment plus whatever portion we're currently in. Point being is we handle the prorating for you. So we do have, let's say here, some of the different, here's basically a teaser of some of this is the new SwiftCloud 3.0 system. And we've got, let's say, a metered use agreement, right? So we'll just go here, look up Tejas, he's one of my programmers, or I'll look up myself, right? You could add a new user if we wanted to, and it's just gonna say, okay, great, and give us a name, phone, email. In this case, I'm gonna actually go back to myself, and then what we need to do is choose the actual SKU, the actual product. So if you have a set product, that is an option. You don't necessarily have to. The package here in this case is like, we've got different options as to like, what is this? Is this metered? Is this qualifying product? Do they have to have a base fee, right? So this is for, let's say, more for business software, or if there's a base fee plus metered use, then anyway, that's an option. So we've got the different types of agreements here. We could actually just create a subscription or agreement. Let's say in this case, I'll go to Roger and find myself and look up the product. In this case, Pilates. Again, I'm in the demo account, so there's not a lot of products in here, but you could have any number of these. What we really need to do is hook up a search to this so that if you really had like 200 products, it should be searchable. So I think on 3.0 we'll do that. You could actually choose your effective date. So if somebody, let's say, is calling you and handling this in person, you might want to, you might not want it to be today. You might want it to be the 22nd or something like that. Initial payment made, $489, we'll say, and that pays through, great, that pays me through, let's say, August 1st, right, something like that. And I just click save, and that's going to create the agreement down here. So in this case, I want to close it because I want to create a bunch. Lease, similar sort of situation. Here we have the option to create a custom asset. So in case of insurance, you could create a custom asset called policy. And then what you do is, so you create a custom asset type in the settings, and then within that you can create all of the different sub policies, right? So whatever, it's the ACA Silver plan, it's the ACA Gold plan, Bronze plan, these types of things. And if they're being prorated, then I don't know how we'd handle that, but I think that it's all probably possible. We would have to just kind of go from there. So again, we have an option for initial payment made. We could also just choose that the initial payment was not made, and then the system, what it should do is trigger a email to them, say, hey, you have, basically at that point it would treat it as an unpaid payment failed subscription, and then hopefully your date isn't too far, but right, anyway, point being is it would prompt them to pay, right? And so if you created that it was effective in the past, then it would treat it as a past due event and start going right to the nasty grams. So I would say you probably don't want to do that. Payment method on file is fairly straightforward, right? So I could just put in Roger and basically say, okay, a credit card, so I put in 4111, I could put in Discover or something like that. I could put in 5738, right? It's going to tell me, give me a preview and let me store the expiration date, and then of course we will show the expiration date down here, right? So in this case it expires July 27th. We do have the option to trigger a sequence based on expiration automatically. So what we can do is prompt people. That's why this is tracked here in this way. That's a different sequence. So to create a sequence, all you have to do is go to the main drive and basically go here and you go to sequence, and we can actually create one. We've got a separate video of that, but basically create a sequence called card on file expiring. That of course will greet them by name, say, hey, your card is set to expire on date, right? And please update it here, link to the portal, right? That kind of thing. So fairly straightforward. You can create sequences for any of these types of things. You could even technically, so currently with SwiftCloud 2.0, we don't have an option to remove them once the payment method is updated. Well, I take that back. Technically it would, because that would change their expiration date. So you get the idea. It does have the status, so in this case it's valid, right? It's working. If it were failing, then we would see different options here for blocked, chargeback, banned, right? Banned would be some sort of, let's say, a security violation or something like that. Let's say you're running a karate school, or they threatened an employee, or for some reason. That's pretty rare, but it does happen. Technically speaking, if somebody is banned, it instantly cuts off their account, and you could prorate them manually, right, if something like that happened. Let's say it was a violation. Let's say that it turns out that they were committed fraud on their application. Let's say that their income changed or something like that, and so their current insurance policy is no longer valid because it was made under false pretenses. You might want to use them. You might need banned in some cases. Blocked is also used for other things. That's typically when people are applying using a fraudulent card. So we do have API-based systems where we can look for fraudulently obtained cards. In the case of in insurance, that's not going to really happen because there's no real big benefit. Well, technically, I suppose it could because of the intent to commit fraud. So somebody could use a stolen card, but that'd be pretty unlikely. So anyway, late one just means that the payment failed one time, but that isn't necessarily if it's over the limit. It might be that they just made a payment and they pay off their credit card every month, and it's fine, and it's going to work just fine in 2 or 3 days. So what we do is we technically try and rebuild them 3 times, but this is again controllable under the sequence on the new 3.0 system. On the old system, 2.0. Then it is automatically set to 3 attempts. And on the 3rd attempt, if it fails, then it goes straight to canceled, right? So we go late 1, late 2, canceled, if the 3rd one fails. Active is, of course, everything else, right? So in this case, this is showing as expired, right? Canceled, because it expired on September 12th, 2020 for this subscription. It does have the monthly in this case, and there's no next renewal, and there's no next renewal for a card on file. So here on the drive, this is where you actually create all the assets, right? So this would be your document. Here I have an actual policy. So what I could do is create a policy type. And again, that would be like, ACA Gold or something like that if you wanted to. Here the actual SKU. This is actually how you manage the payment for the item itself. And that's obviously for a fixed rate. So in the case of ACA where you have subsidies, then obviously that's going to have to be calculated differently, and we'd have to put in an extra layer for that, where we basically put in a base price and then put in a calculation and an offset, right? A discount, effectively. So we do have support for discounts in here, and that's technically probably how we would end up doing it, is using a discount and a sale price, basically, something like that. Well, it'd be a discount price, but we can put in. So we do have support for volume discounts. That's how that would apply to insurance. I don't really know, but it is an option for certain things. So we've got a fair amount of flexibility there. This is the main settings of the support of the account, right? In this case, it's just my demo account here. But what we can do is, what I want to draw your attention to is a few things. Number one is the role, right? So here, this would be for insurance. This would be the insured, right? And then we've got the different task opportunity types that can be used for, let's say, payment recovery or something like that. And custom asset types, this is where I have policy, right? So this is where I set the type. It's not where I set the actual policy, it's where I create the type of custom asset. So here we have a list of contacts. Of course, everything's searchable. You can search by name, phone, email. We do have a really powerful tag score system, and what that would allow you to do is put in, let's say, somebody's policy amount, and then you could show me a range. So here we have an actual advanced tag search. So in the new 3.0 system, we have a more powerful tag system, and it would allow you to even sort by a range, right? So show me all of the policies that are between X and Y, or have an expiration of Y and Z or something like that. So we are continuing to refine that data. And so here's the actual contact. Of course, you can see all the history for an individual contact, and you can upload files, you can upload documents, basically anything they do. In this case, it's like, we've got a whole bunch of different workrooms. This is my demo account, right? That's me. So you can store any bit of information, right? If you've got power of attorney or something like that, that information could be in here, right? Under relationship, we would just put that under other, and then put in power of attorney contact. That kind of thing is going to happen. We do have an option to specify dates, right? So the dates in the calendar would show any like upcoming dates, right? So renewal dates, payment dates, insured dates or coverage dates, that kind of thing can be stored here in the contact detail. Time clocks, not really applicable. Tasks and projects would be only applicable if I shared any tasks and contacts with this person, which I don't. But that technically can include things like a phone call. So technically what we do is, on the sales side, we trigger a task to call somebody based on, let's say, 14 days. So that can be show as a task. Here is this is the 3.0 system, just specifically for metered use. But again, we've got the same sort of basic options. Folders and workrooms, that's pretty straightforward. So folders technically are just unshared workrooms. Workrooms are shared folders. And we've got the different types, right? So here it says RS because it's currency specific. So that is the Whirlwind tour. I hope this was helpful for you. At the very least, we've worked hard to build something that's worked for different clients that we've been working with, and so we've got tremendous power over the system. And bottom line, whatever your billing method is, we want to help you optimize your revenue and get where you need to go. Thanks.